Okay.
So, good evening, everyone. We'll begin with the Dharma Request for tonight's lecture. 欢迎大家，我们来请法，可以请三宝来主持。请合掌。Please put your palms together.
Gong Jing Da De Sang Ting Wei Ci Fa Hui Ji Che Zhong Sheng Qing Zhuan Miao Fa Lun Jiao Dao Wo Men Ru He Liao Shang Tuo Si Li Ku Da La Su Zhang Wu Shang Will the For the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto sujedoye alahati samya sambuddhoche.
Namo sadanto suchedoya alahadi samya sambuddhoche.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it, and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, Dharma Master, and all good and wise friends, both online and present, Amitabha. Welcome to our Sutra lecture tonight. It's April 7th, 2022. We'll continue to find out what is Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land like? What are the beings that dwell there? What's the scenery like? And we get a chance in this sutra to get a detailed account. For me, it's been very rich because before this, I hadn't really, we read the shorter Amitabha Sutra and we just get a kind of a small kind of summary of what's going on in the Pure Land. But in this text, it's elaborated in great detail. So it really helps us in our understanding and also our envisioning of the Pure Land. 好，诸佛菩萨、藏人、各位法师、各位善知识，阿弥陀佛。今晚我们很难得的可以来研究《无量寿经》。这个经文呢是来描述阿弥陀佛极乐世界是怎么一回事。我觉得非常难得的，因为我们在那个《阿弥陀经》有读一点点极乐世界是怎么样的，但在《无量寿经》里面呢，我们就可以说很详细的知道，在极乐世界的天气怎么样啊，这个环境怎么样啊，众生怎么样啊，然后就可以来更深的一个理解。但这个理解不只是理解，我们就也可以来用我们的心来关照，可以想象阿弥陀佛极乐世界是真的是多美妙、多庄严。好，所以我们今天就来继续研究《无量寿经》。但我们先开始来念佛，请阿弥陀佛到我们心中。可以说我们在一个念佛是一个开始点，可以有这个极乐世界的一个味道。So we'll start with reciting Amitabha Buddha's name. Say Amitabha Buddha is like a gateway to the Pure Land. So if we recite with a sincere heart, it's like we get the chance to have a flavor of Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land. Namo Amitabha
弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛，阿弥陀佛。可以了哈 ，OK， 好，大家在座的法师，还有我们前面的佛友，还有线上的佛友，大家晚安，阿弥陀佛。
So all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, all Dharma Masters present, and all Dharma friends online and present, Amitabha.
我们今天在继续研究《佛说无量寿经》的经文，是在84页的中文，然后85页的英文，86页的这样子。我想说到84页的这个如是六返了，这个那就86页下一次再讲。
So on page 84 and 85 in the sutra text.
好，我们先大家来一起读中文一遍，然后再英文一遍。
So we'll first read the Chinese and then we'll read the English.
我想我们今天还是来从自然夺风一直念到这个底下的最后第二行就是如是六返，这样子的今天我们要讲的经文。
So we'll begin on the second paragraph on page 84. It says 自然得风, and in English is a spontaneous breeze.
好，大家请合掌，我们大家一起念中文，等一下也一起念英文。好，自然得风，习其微动，其风调和，不寒不暑， 温良柔软，不迟不急，摧诸罗网集众宝术，演发无量微妙法音，流布万种温雅德香。其有闻者，尘劳垢习自然不齐，风触其身，皆得快乐。譬如比丘得灭尽三昧，又风吹散花，遍满佛土，随摄次第而不杂乱，柔软光泽，馨香分裂，足履其上，现下四寸，随即主仪，还复如故。花用以其地者开裂，以是化末，清净无疑。随其时节，风吹散花，如是六凡。好，85页。
So now we'll read the English on page 85, starting with a spontaneous breeze.
Okay.
A spontaneous breeze of virtue blows gently, harmonious, warm and refreshing. It is neither too cold nor too hot, neither too slow nor too fast. When this breeze blows through these nets and jewel trees, infinite wondrous Dharma sounds and myriad refined fragrances of virtue pervade everywhere. Defilements and unwholesome habits naturally do not arise in those who hear these sounds or smell these fragrances. Feeling this breeze on the body brings joy like that of a bhikshu who has attained the samadhi of complete cessation. Moreover, this breeze scatters flowers throughout this Buddha land, arranging them according to their colors. The flowers are soft, luminous, and rich in fragrance. When stepped on, they sink 4 inches. When the foot is lifted, they return to their original state. Once these flowers are no longer needed, the ground opens up and the flowers vanish, leaving the ground clean without any traces. 6 times a day, this breeze scatters flowers in this way.
好。我们德风呢，上个礼拜我们有讲过了，然后我们讲一直到譬如比丘得灭尽三昧，所以呢，今天我们再继续下去，就是也是在讲这个得风，这个风吹的这个佛土的这个事情。那我们等一下我们会来解释一下那个又风吹散花遍满佛土的，一直到如是六环，我们来解释一下，然后再做比较深入的解释。像那个比丘得灭尽三昧我们想今天来主要讲的这个重点。
So we will look at this wind that blows in the Pure Land. In this paragraph we read, this breeze scatters flowers throughout this Buddha land. And we, at the very end of this paragraph, talks about how this breeze does this 6 times a day. So we'll explain this a little bit and then investigate it more deeply. But the topic that we will focus on today is, in the previous paragraph, where it talks about the bhikshu who has attained the Samadhi of complete cessation. What is that?
Yeah. 好像这个今天的经文又当然这个就是释迦牟尼佛来告诉阿难说的，又呢当然就是还有的意思啦。
So the moreover is the Buddha speaking to Venerable Ananda saying, there's more that I want to tell you.
像风吹散花遍满佛土这个就是说 这个温和的这个风啊吹起来，那这个美丽的花呢，遍布了整个的佛土，就是极乐世界那里。
So this breeze blows in the Pure Land, and scattered everywhere throughout this land are these flowers that the breeze carries.
那这个这些花呢，都随顺的这个颜色啊，然后呢次第啊，都整齐，都不会杂乱的。
So these flowers, you could say, fall or scattered in kind of neat, organized ways. They're all arranged by their colors.
所以呢，这个花呢，而且呢，都是非常柔软，而且是非常光明亮泽的，也。
So they're soft and luminous.
而且呢，还有这个很浓的这个芳香呢，人们走在这个上面呢，而且会陷下去4寸。
So they're very rich in fragrance, and when stepped on, you sink 4 inches.
这个4寸啊，其实我看有人翻译，就是唐朝翻译了4个指，就是4指的意思。
Some people also translate this 4 inches as 4 widths of your finger. So you can just imagine you sink down this much. 4 fingers.
4指，然后呢，它又随着这个脚你提起来的时候呢，又恢复了原来的样子。
So when you pick up your foot, you go back. It goes back to its original state. So the flowers come back up.
所以呢，这个而且呢，那边的人呢，把这个花都用完了，然后呢，就是都撒完了以后呢，它大地呢，就是地上的那个会裂开一个缝，让这个花呢，把它化没到这个地底下去。
So once these flowers are no longer needed, the ground actually opens up, kind of like a crack, and then all the flowers go in, and the ground is left very clean.
所以这样子的话，都会显到这个极乐世界的这个地面呢，都非常的干净，没有一丝毫的这个花瓣留下来。
So the ground of the Pure Land is really clean, not even a petal is left over. So it's just very neat and orderly and pristine.
而且像这样子呢，它随顺的这个时间呢，温和的这个风吹散了，这样子的这个他们的这样子的一个在这样子的做如此的作业呢，它总共呢算有6次6环呐，6环呢，这个环的意思就是一天6个时辰。
So 6 times a day, this breeze scatters flowers.
那这个6个时辰呢，就是白天3个时辰，就是早上就是，然后到中午，然后到下午，然后晚上呢又3个时辰，就是初夜，然后中夜，然后后夜，所以总共有6个时辰6入，就是一天啦。
So this is just the 6 times a day. You could say the day is broken up into 6 parts. So the daytime, there's the morning, the afternoon, the late afternoon. And then the evening, there's the early evening, mid-evening, and kind of late evening, or it's kind of completely dark. And so this is kind of the 6 times part of the day.
那这个是今天的这个经文所讲的。那上个星期呢，我们有提到这个夺风，然后它是非常的温雅柔软的，非常调和。那这个呢，最重要就是给我们修行，那里去修行，因为你这个风啊，那触到你的身体呢，会非常的快乐。
So last week we talked about this wind of virtue, or this breeze of virtue. And this breeze is harmonious, warm, and refreshing, very gentle. And when it touches our body, we naturally feel this kind of joy and this wish to cultivate.
所以呢，他这个快乐的情况呢，就是比如啊，所以这个释迦牟尼佛，比如他讲得到比丘呢，得到这个灭尽三昧的这个快乐。那今天我们来解释一下这个这一些像比丘啊，还有灭尽三昧啊，还有灭尽的这个事情。
So this breeze and the joy that it brings is given an analogy. This analogy is that of a bhikshu who has realized the samadhi of complete cessation. So we'll investigate, what is this samadhi of complete cessation?
所以呢，这个关于这个什么是一个比丘，这个像比丘，今天我跟净传师，我们穿这个就是比丘的衣服，讲法的时候，我们都是要穿比丘的衣服来讲法。
So we'll begin with saying, what is a bhikshu? And on the stage here, we have Jing Fosher and Jing Chuan. Both are wearing this kasaya sash, the precept sash of a bhikshu. So when we are sharing the Dharma, we wear the sash. Actually, in fact, we wear the sash all the time. This was one of the, you could say, guidelines or instructions that Master Hua gave to the monks in DRBA, in Dharma Realm Buddhist Association, our monks and nuns. So every day we repeat twice a day, do I always wear my precept sash? Because what happened in China is that I think it's largely probably because of inconvenience in terms of wearing the sash and working and doing things, that people ended up not wearing it so much. And then by not wearing it so much, they actually ended up sometimes not even wearing it at all. And so Master Hua, when he came to the United States and wanted to establish Buddhism here in the West, he wanted to make sure people recognized, what does a bhikshu look like? And this sash here is the sash that the Buddha designed, or maybe not say designed, he continued a lineage. He had an insight and saw that the Buddhas of the past up to the present, this was how they wore their robes. So it's not just our time. He looked deep into the past, and this is the image of a mendicant, a cultivator. And so he carried it on to current times. 所以这个袈裟我们穿的不只是我们在讲法时候穿，那个上人他规定我们出家人在法中是衣不离体，意思是说我们常常穿的袈裟，在中国佛教很多时候出家人就可能是因为不方便啊等等啊，过了可能几百年啊，这个袈裟就穿的不多，有时候都不穿了，因为可能他们去外面旅游啊等等啊比较不方便。所以上人呢，他说我们在美国开始这个佛法是个开始点，所以他就要求要大家认识这个比丘像是怎么一回事，所以他就规定我们要穿这个袈裟。我有个小短的故事讲一下。I have a short story actually now, just sharing about the precept sash that I found deeply moving. The Buddha, left home and cultivated the way, and actually became the Buddha. And as I said, he had this insight about what the Buddhas of the past, what their disciples wore. and basically it was a sash, cut into pieces so that it was not considered valuable, and it was designed almost like paddy fields so that the monks represent the field of offerings. But essentially it's rag robes, kind of discarded pieces of cloth, very simple, dyed so that it looks neat and orderly, but not valuable. And one day he went back to his home, went back to his kingdom where his father was. And as he went to the kingdom, his father got news that his son had returned, but not as the prince, but wearing the sash. And so his father came out and greeted him and said, why are you wearing these rags? You're royal blood, you're royal heritage. You should wear kind of the clothing that is very dignified, very kind of adorned, very majestic, royalty. I was really struck the Buddha's response to his father. Say, don't look down on this sash. This sash is the sash of all the Buddhas. It's you could say the nobility of this sash far surpasses anything of this world. And I just remember that I could just imagine that exchange, right? The Buddha there wearing the precept sash, his father coming worried that his son was wearing ragged robes and wanting his son to, live up to his bloodline. And the Buddha turning that around and saying, actually, if you expand your vision out of just the narrow scope of worldly dharma, of power and status, but to the lineage of the noble sages, this sash is not at all to be looked down upon. In fact, it's something that is extremely valued in all realms. 所以这个故事我觉得蛮感动的。我记得我第一次听到，就是说佛陀他出家修行、修道成佛，就发觉这个佛啊跟弟子啊，他们都是穿的这个袈裟，就这样子特别的这个设计，有一部分的就是从不是很有价钱的这个衣服再放在一起，然后缝在一起就可以当个袈裟，就是来用一个颜色啊，整齐啊。所以他有一天呢，回到他的这个爸爸，他们那个叫国王嘛，这个 kingdom 皇宫，他爸爸听到从人民啊，你的儿子回来了，但是他穿的这个衣服是就是粪兽衣，就是我们这个
少分衣啊，
少分衣，对不对？然后他爸爸听到心里很难过，他去外面见他的儿子，他说：“儿子，你穿的衣服是这个什么这个少分衣，这个我们是国王啊，我们是有是怎么说中文怎么说nobility， 就是好像很有价值，威严，就是很有地位在社会上的。你穿的衣服是要非常这个好看的这个 dignified， 很有威仪的这样子这个价值的，大家看到非常佩服的。怎么穿的是这样子的衣服？我再给你好点的衣服穿。他爸爸很难过。我觉得在这个故事里，佛陀的回答怎么说？说爸爸不要这样子想，说国王不要这样子想，可能不是爸爸，国王不要这样子想。这个衣服不只是我穿的，是从早期到现在的佛陀跟弟子出家众都是穿这个衣服。这个衣服是在三界里面是非常有价值的，非常有价值的。我记得我听这个故事很感动，是因为他 这个很简单的这个对话呢，就是说让他爸爸的这个眼光开大。很多人以为衣服啊，就是觉得哦，我们的地位啊，我们的成功啊，我们有价钱啊。但佛陀这个眼光呢，把这个衣服变成是真正是圣人的衣服，这是真正的是有真正的价值的，不是用钱来买的，是可以说表现这个德行的一个生活banner 是什么？就是一个这个样子，不是样子，说一个是什么？那个 banner，the banner of the arhants， 这个代表模范一个代表。这个英文有个字叫 banner of the arhants， 在佛教里面有个这个字叫 banner of the arhants，the sash is the banner of the arhants， 这个袈裟是阿罗汉的这个标明，可以这样子说。所以这个是非常非常难得的。所以上人在美国要我们穿袈裟，可以说是非常不是不方便，反而是非常有价值，非常可以说感恩的一件事情。So to be in the West, to be able to wear the precept sash is not, you could say, an inconvenience, but in fact something truly to be valued and to be grateful for. So just a little bit on the sash.
好，我要讲的这个比丘呢，这个是我们出家众。什么是比丘？我们来稍微解释一下。别个所谓比丘呢，他是出家众，而且要受这个具足戒，具足戒的这个具足戒是多少戒呢？比丘
The sound cutting out.
比丘是要受250戒的可以了没
？Batteries? Let's double check Jing Forsher's battery. 你的电池有换吗？
有啊，
有
应该有啊哈。
OK。
他这个就是要受250戒的这个一个出家众，所以才可以，而且要经过这个三坛大戒来受戒，所以这个才可以称为比丘。
So I'm sure in the Pure Land, when the Amitabha Buddha speaks Dharma, he doesn't need a sound system and doesn't run out of batteries. 所以说，在阿弥陀佛极乐世界，像阿弥陀佛讲法的时候，他不需要一个声音的广播的机器，他们阿弥陀佛的讲法是不需要电池的。所以刚刚净佛是说，我们这个比丘呢，什么是一个比丘？一比丘英文so Jing Forsher asked, what is a bhikshu? And in terms of a definition, it is a person who has taken the full precepts, the full 250 precepts of a bhikshu.
那这个比丘另外还有一个名字，就是乞士，乞就是乞丐啊，士就是一个士人士啊，这样子就乞丐的人啊，他是乞什么？是从如来那边来乞法，他是要来修行，然后呢，对底下的人呢来乞食，对就是去外面跟一般的俗人世俗的人来乞食，来滋养身体。
So the bhikshu has another meaning, that of alms mendicant. Here also sometimes it's translated as a beggar, but actually I would say there's some nuances there that we use the word beggar, you have to be careful of. But let's say alms mendicant. And what does this mean? The bhikshus, you could say, request the Dharma from the Buddha so they know how to cultivate. And then they request food from those in the world so that they can sustain their body. But this one about requesting food is not about climbing on conditions, but rather being a field of blessings, meaning you're available for those who wish to give. It's not, I'm going out to beg from you, please give me all this, I really want this and that. It's, I'm here as a field of blessings if you so choose to practice generosity.
那像一般的乞食的人呢，就是一般乞丐呢，他只有乞吃的或者是乞衣服的，但是呢，他没有乞这个法，这个佛法没有，所以呢，这个是不同世般的这一般世间的人的这个乞食啊。
So you say a regular beggar in the world, they just beg for food and clothes. But the bhikshu, they actually request the Dharma. They follow the Dharma. So this is something that's unique.
而且这个比丘呢，他除了乞食以外呢，还有布魔，就是来给这个魔恐怖，然后破恶，所有的这个不好的，他都可以破掉。还有另外一个净命来，就是清净这个慧命。
So some other names for the bhikshu is what? Say frightener of Mara. So Mara, who's the demon king, or his say demonic armies, they're afraid of the bhikshus. Actually, I have a story about that. Then there's also another meaning, which the kind of stopping of evil or stopping of harm. And another one is purifying wisdom.
好，当然，那女众呢，女众出家人呢，她受具足戒以后呢，她就称为比丘尼。
So a bhikshuni is a female who takes the full precepts. And when they take the full precepts, they become a bhikshuni.
那这个比丘尼要受500戒，而且要另外来另外一个8境戒，他要守这个8境戒。
500戒啊，我以为是300多。So at least here in Jing Forsher's notes, it says the bhikshunis take 500 precepts and 8 precepts of respect.
这个是500戒的这个戒本，它这个348，那是一般诵戒的时候。
对。
那真正的它
500个。
它是500个。
Yeah, I usually remember 348 is the number that I hear usually.
Yeah.
But here it says maybe 500. Maybe they have a lot of other smaller precepts that are also listed. Actually, when you say 500 or 250, that's just the main list that we recite as monks and nuns. There's actually many small precepts around how one conducts one's life that a monastic, you could say, is mindful of.
他这个比丘尼呢，他是阿难啊，那时候阿难来跟佛陀来请给他们来受戒。那这个第一个就是他的姨母，他的姨母叫做大爱道，这个就是一个比丘尼的一个开始。
So the Bhikshuni order started from the request of Venerable Ananda. He requests on their behalf, and the first Bhikshuni's name, I believe, was Venerable Mahaparapati. As defined, first nun. I forgot the actual way to say her name. Mahapajapati. Pajapati. That's right. Mahapajapati was the first nun. Mahapajapati Gotami.
这是佛的姨母吗？
Yeah, he's kind of the stepmother. Took care of the Buddha after the Buddha's mother actually passed away after his birth, and so she raised the Buddha.
好，我们大概都知道什么是比丘、比丘尼。那下面我们来谈谈这个昧净，昧净三昧，这个昧净三昧呢，它又名是昧受想定。三昧呢，就是一个定，昧净定。
So next we'll talk about the samadhi of complete cessation. But I have a story for sure about the fear of Mara. 有个故事是为什么比丘，不是说为什么比丘，但是说有个故事，就是蛮有意思的，就要表达这个比丘的名称。So I think actually each of these terms that the Buddha gives for the bhikshu is very much worth contemplating, because it helps us, especially as monastics, understand what our deeper purpose is. What are we trying to do? And so Jing Fosher said, we're alms mendicants, so we live on the generosity of others, and we're here to live by the Dharma. We're you could say, people who are cultivating, and so there's a kind of frightener of Mara, so the demons are scared. They're not completely in control, manipulating things the way they want it. We're able to work on beginning to put an end to harm. Right? We don't go to war. We don't carry a gun. We don't carry weapons. And we purify our wisdom. So this story was, I remember talking to a monk who was sharing with me how oftentimes the nearby university would send those who are mentally ill to the monastery, those that they couldn't heal, they couldn't get better. And so they would send him to his monastery because he had a relationship with the psychology department. And I remember asking him about, oh, interesting. So what do you do? Because, clearly right now mental illness is something that's really, you can say it's kind of like a pandemic in the West. There's just a lot of people who are suffering from, depression or other kinds of mental troubles. And so he said, well, actually first, he said, in the West, there's a kind of a blind spot when it comes to mental illness. Because in the West, people are constantly looking for like a silver bullet. Like one thing, you just do that and you'll find a solution. Take some pill and everything will be fine. He's saying it's not that easy. These habitual patterns of the mind have been kind of nurtured and repeated for maybe decades, if not lifetimes. So thinking that you can have just one silver bullet that will just take care of it almost instantaneously by manipulating some chemicals, saying, we might need a deeper way of looking at these issues, right? So I thought, that's actually an interesting insight. I hadn't really thought about that before, about how we have some assumptions in the West about how we deal with mental illness and health. But he said that there is some cases that come to the monastery who are going through internal mental issues like schizophrenia and all these other things that actually can be healed pretty quickly. And he described how, I said, oh really? He says, yeah, those are the ones who are possessed. I said, oh, okay, those are possessed. Yeah, because if they can get not possessed, then there's a kind of a freedom of mind. And I said, well, in general, in our teachings, for us as monks, with Master Hua, there's many stories of Master Hua basically helping people, but it was very clear that he gave instructions for his monks to not get involved because you don't have the virtue. There's one classic story of Reverend Heng Shi when he was in Taiwan, and when Master Hua was leaving, he told Reverend Heng Shi, when I leave, people are going to come to you asking for you to heal them, to kind of cast out demons, to get rid of spirits. He says, if you try to do anything and those spirits come after you, and they drag you down into the hells, I'm not coming after you. Rinpoche goes, oh, okay. When Master Hua left, exactly that happened. People came to him asking for him to heal them and exorcise demons and these kind of things. And he said, I sorry, I can't do that. Anyway, so I talked with this monk, and I said, yeah, we don't generally do that, I know, and because it could be, a little bit like we don't really know what we're doing. And the monk says, yes, I definitely understand that. But what's interesting is that oftentimes these negative energies and spirits are very scared of bhikshus, are very scared of monastics, because there's a kind of purity and light within the bhikshu that these energies don't want to draw near. I thought, oh, that's interesting. Because of living by the precepts, wearing the precept sash, there's a kind of a purity that maybe that represents. Of course, I think it's each monk's attempt to try to cultivate to the best of their ability. He said, number one, that oftentimes these spirits don't want to draw near to bhikshus. I would assume also bhikshunis. And then the second thing he said was, I don't exorcise these demons or fight with them. But what I found is the most powerful way to heal these people is actually taking refuge. Is if they take refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, somehow things open up for them. And so don't look down on the three refuges. It's very, very powerful, he told me. I was like, oh, we say Gui Yi Fo, Gui Yi Fa. We just kind of rolls right off the tongue. We don't really think about it. But from his vision of it, of what he saw, these three refuges were extremely powerful practices on giving kind of inner solidity and freedom, freedom from these negative energies taking over. And so we have one demonic energy, which is our phones. They ring all the time. And so I remember hearing that story, and what I felt was, in terms of what Jing Forsher just said, this kind of idea of frightener of Mara, meaning that when we go to the monastery, to a pure place of practice, then these negative energies have a more difficult time coming in. Right? Every day in the monastery, we recite the Shrangva mantra at the beginning of the day. We recite the heart mantra at the end of the day. There's this kind of spiritual field that's created through our practices, through the lifestyle that we live. And I think for the negative energies in the world, it's actually kind of scary, because when you see that purity, somehow I think what happens is you have to look inside and you realize somehow I'm living a life of harm, of deception, of manipulation, and I can't control these people in that way. And all of a sudden I have to look inside, and that's frightening. To look inside is very frightening if we live a life of constant lies. 所以我就简单的讲这个故事，我翻译的比较简单一点。我是说，这个比丘，我想也比丘尼来下魔是什么意思呢？我记得跟一个出家人在讨论的时候，他就讲一个故事，就说这个恶神啊，这个魔啊，对出家众这个比丘，我想也是比丘尼，会为他们清净非常害怕，因为这个清净的光明，他们接近的会很害怕。他这第一个，第二个他说，另外皈依是非常有力量的一个法。这个魔王啊，跟这个恶神啊，你这个人真正皈依，他们这个很多时候他们心可以开。我觉得他讲这两个，我们常常觉得看皈依就很简单一件事情，皈依佛、皈依法、皈依僧，但是他的眼光来看，这个是很了不起的一个事情，是非常要注重的一件事情，真正找到心中的一个皈依处，一个稳定的地方。所以我觉得这个是蛮有意思的。我不要讲太多，但是解释一点点。
好，我们讲这个灭尽三昧啊，灭尽三昧是定嘛。然后他灭什么呢？他是灭我们 六识里面心所有的不给它起作用，所以这一种的禅定就是叫做灭尽定。
So what is the samadhi of complete cessation? It's actually putting a stop to all the six consciousnesses. So this is the samadhi of the cessation.
他是算不还果的这个圣人他这个就是说他能够用这样子来入涅槃的想，入涅槃来做这个入涅槃的这个想法，这个定呢，所以他对一切的心呢，他都可以灭尽。
他是阿罗汉呢，还是阿那含呢？
起不还国啦，就圣人啦。
So he's a
他这个
不还国，不还国 is so he's a sage who is, I think he says not returning. It has the cultivation result of not returning, and so it's considered a sage. Maybe you could say it's an arhat, and it's 为假如涅槃之想而。
他是那个
好像吗？
他是要能够进入涅槃的这个
allows them to enter nirvana.
然后他在这个就是等于一个入大涅槃啦。他这个就是他一个到最后面修行就是要入涅槃的这个。那他这个时候呢，他就把一切的这个心识全部都灭尽，不起作用了。
So it's realizing nirvana. So all the kind of conditioned dharmas of the mind are put to rest.
好，这个我想说，这个灭尽定的意思就是说来解释这样子。然后还有一个三昧呢，三昧我们是讲说灭尽三昧，三昧其实就是三摩地啦，这个就是来讲正受，正受的然后把心呢住在一处不动，这个时候叫做三昧。
So samadhi is often defined as 正受. Literal translation would be proper reception. I think if you look at our translations, you often hear proper reception. But I think maybe a more inspiring translation would be something like a deep inner alignment. Everything is aligned. We're kind of completely in tune.
另外这个三昧里面呢，又称为三摩地。三摩地呢，这个就是说有等持的意思等持就是说都慈心平等的一个境界的一个定，叫做是
So I think I didn't translate one part of it. 正受，然后还有个什么正受，然后
正定
正定 is proper reception and proper samadhi as a kind of unification of the mind, deep inner alignment. And the other one that Jing Fosher just talked about is
这个
also is samadhi.
三昧也是叫做三摩地呀。
It's 等持
等
的念，等是什么意思 ？Wait，
等持就是说你这个把这个心呢住在一个地方呢，它就是持，就是把心放在那里，你迟迟不动这样子。
So another aspect of this samadhi is that you put the mind in one place and it doesn't move.
所以呢，这个就是你把心放在一个地方、一个境界呢，它就是一种定在那里了。那这个所以这个等持也是可以用这个等持的这个功德呢，来 助缘一性，然后呢，然后可以离开所有的一切邪恶杂乱的事情。
So by having the mind being able to stay put in one place, then one is able to free oneself of all the scattered thinking and negative and kind of confused, kind of, we say, deluded ways that we often use our minds. So the mind has this kind of inner focus. Very important in current times. I think oftentimes we just get lost in our thoughts, in our fantasies, or our nightmares. That's probably even scarier. And we don't know how to get out of it. You know, we create a nightmare for ourselves, and it's created from our mind, right? Our minds create all these little stories that we can really get worked up about. And we can't seem just to hold our mind steady in one place and just let all those fantasies and nightmares fall away. 所以这个是非常重要的一个可以说修行法门，就是把我们的心可以放在一个地方。有很多时候我们就是很多这个幻想，叫幻想吗？自己的这个 fantasy 叫什么？我们美好的梦，美好的梦，我们自己想那个美好的梦，哦，有这个还有那个，或者我们有一个噩梦，一个很害怕的梦，然后我们就是跟着跑。不知道我们可以把心定下来，这个定下来真的是一个自由，因为我们就不会被这些梦来控制，被迷惑掉。
好，我们在佛陀时代呢，算有很多的比丘都在修行。那对于一些比丘佛陀他也看到修行的比丘要怎么样子来修行，所以今天我们讲到这个比丘，我就举了几个比丘的这个修行佛陀的一个开始给大家来分享。这个是在这个法纪经里面的。
So I would like to share a story about the monks cultivating, the bhikshus cultivating. And this is a talk by the Buddha for the bhikshus, seeing how the various monks were cultivating the way. And so this talk of the Buddha comes from the Dhammapada.
在这个法纪经里面有一个他这个比丘，他在佛陀要涅槃的前4个月的时候呢，他就公开宣告自己，佛陀他就讲4个月以前他就公开了，他要入涅槃了。
So one day the Buddha said that in 4 months he will enter nirvana.
所以呢，很多的这个比丘，就还没有证到阿罗汉果的。这个听到佛陀这样子说呢，是非常的伤心，也不知道，因为他还没有证果嘛，所以他们不知道该怎么办。
So many of the monks, the bhikshus, who were not arhants, hearing this news from the Buddha, became very sad and didn't know what to do.
所以呢，从那一天开始呢，他们这些没有证到的阿罗汉的。这个比丘呢，都一直跟随着佛陀的身边。
So from that day onwards, these monks constantly followed the Buddha. They always stayed by his side.
但是有一位呢，就是阿塔达塔比丘呢，他却不去跟佛陀见面，他也不在那边跟着佛陀这样子。他反而要在下定决心呢，要在这个佛陀入灭以前，他要证到这个阿罗汉果。
So there was one monk, however, who didn't just follow the Buddha, or didn't follow the Buddha. This monk was named Amitabha Bhikshu, and he didn't go and see the Buddha. Rather, he made a strong determination, a resolve, that before the Buddha entered nirvana, he would realize arhatship.
所以呢，他就下这个决心以后，他就自己努力的精进禅修，其他的比丘呢不明白他的心意，然后带他去见这个佛陀。
So he then really applied his effort in cultivation, in Chan practice, or maybe say at times not Chan, in India maybe dhyana practice, kind of meditation and purifying his heart and mind. So
所以
at that
呢，
time, some of the monks didn't understand his strong resolve, and so they wanted to bring him to see the Buddha.
然后呢，他们带他去，然后跟佛陀讲啊，他这个比丘呢，他是不敬爱、不敬重你，所以他自以为他自己为中心，他自己做他的事情。
So these monks brought him to the Buddha and told the Buddha, this monk isn't filial, doesn't care about you. He just cares about himself. He's just very selfish doing his own things.
但是这个阿塔达塔呢，他是去非常的恭敬来解释，来顶礼释迦牟尼佛。他说啊，他在佛陀入灭以前呢，就是说往生以前呢，他要证得阿罗汉国。
So Anandadatta, Venerable Anandadatta, said very respectfully to the Buddha, and also bowed and respectfully said to the Buddha that he made a resolve that before the Buddha entered nirvana, he wished to realize arhatship.
那这个佛陀听完他的解释以后呢，非常的赞赏、赞叹他，并且告诉其他的比丘啊，他说啊，你要敬爱我，尊重我，应该就要像阿塔达塔的一样的行为作为。你们来见我，你并不是表示对我有敬意。只有来奉行我的教诲的方法，才是真正来尊崇我，就是来尊敬我的。
So the Buddha praised Adadatta, Venerable Adadatta, telling all the monks, yes, Venerable Anandadatta, he truly is paying his respect, is being filial, is showing his care for the Tathagata, for the Buddha. The way that you show respect isn't the true way, isn't the ultimate way. The true way to show your respect and your care is actually following the teachings that I have given you, to really apply them in your lives. This is true respect, true reverence.
所以呢，这个故事就是说，给我们我们真正的来下定决心来修行，要得到这个佛国，这个才是一个真正的修行，对释迦牟尼佛的敬意来表示，来尊敬他这样子，不是说只有表面上去看看他啦，然后跟他顶顶礼这样子这样子没有用的。
So this gives us clear instructions on how we should cultivate, that we must make a resolve to truly realize the realization of Buddhahood, that we should apply ourselves in our cultivation, that this is the true way that we show our care and respect and reverence to the Buddha. It's not, oh, we just go and see the Buddha and we do a little bowing here and there, but really it's not, deeply transforming our lives. So this is the instructions from the Buddha.
好，另外呢，在这个法纪经里面呢，它也有佛陀来安慰，来跟这个一个老的比丘尼来安慰他，这样子的一个故事，在法纪经里面的一个例子也。
Okay, so maybe before I just translate that, I was going to say about this particular story, I think is very similar to the story that we shared in the very beginning about the Buddha's father, worried about the Buddha, saying, you're not wearing the clothing that fits your status as a noble kind of kshetra, a warrior, ruler caste. And the Buddha is saying to this Buddha, no, actually, I'm wearing the clothes that is the, you could say, banner of the sages. And so the Buddha turns these worldly dharmas to something that transcends. So similarly here, the Buddha is turning a worldly dharma of filiality and respect and care for our teachers or for our elders, for those we love. And this isn't to say not a good dharma, right? That's a wholesome dharma in the world, is this care for our parents and our teachers. But then he takes that wholesome dharma and then actually deepens it. So that's a transcendental dharma, the dharma that really leads to liberation. So he says, if you really want to pay respect to me, then what you want to do is apply the teachings that I have given you in your life. But what I truly wish for you is your liberation. Right? The Buddha, what he cares most about is our freedom, our well-being. And so I think that's a very interesting flip, that there's many things in the Dharma, there's just a little turn from this way that we see things in the world to the way that you could see it in a way that liberates the mind. You could think the same thing as for many people who are talking about being filial to their parents. They say, I want to be filial to my parents, but they're not sure how. And what's interesting is if you apply this kind of vision, then this filiality goes much deeper than just kind of taking care of their physical needs, or just kind of saying hi to them and saying, oh, okay, yeah, what's going on? But actually go into something much more deep. You can see maybe their spiritual well-being, something that truly brings them lasting happiness. That becomes what's true filiality. And not just for our own parents, but for all of our own parents, for many lifetimes, which then includes all living beings. 所以我觉得这个是非常有意思的方式，佛陀会教化从我们世间法的善良的法到一个出世间法，所以这个孝顺的心啊，可以真正到一个解脱的孝顺的心。我们孝顺不只是孝顺父母跟着听了他们所说的，或者是照顾他们的身体，反而是真正的要照顾他们的法身慧命，应该说法身慧命，希望他们真正的解脱。然后这个父母呢，不只是我们这世的父母，是无界以来的生生世世的父母，要来真正照顾他们，就变成要什么呢？要度一切众生。要孝顺一切众生，希望他们都可以解脱。所以这个是佛教里面的我觉得很特别的一个地方。你把一个善法，你用佛法的这个智慧来看，就会变很广大。So then next I want to share another story from the Dhammapada. This is the Buddha encouraging an old bhikshuni, comforting her in her old age.
有这个老比丘尼呢，他有120岁了，他的名字叫做尤塔罗比丘尼。
So this bhikshuni was 120 years old. Her name was Bhikshuni Yotola.
他有一天呢，他在花园回来的时候，路上遇见一位比丘。就请比丘来接受他的供养。
So one day after going on alms round, she met a bhikshu, and so she wished to make an offering to the bhikshu.
然后呢，比丘也同意了，所以他就把每天的这个花园得来的食物呢，都给这个比丘，他一点都没有留给自己。
So the bhikshu agreed. And so the bhikshuni gave all of her alms food to the bhikshu and did not even leave any for herself.
这样子呢，连续3天呢，他都是这样子来做。然后第4天呢，他也出去化缘。
So she did this for 3 days straight. offering her food to this monk. On the fourth day, she went out for alms round.
所以呢，在这个路上呢，他就遇到了这个佛陀，然后呢，他非常恭恭敬敬的来跟佛陀来问讯，然后就退货，但他就退货一点，然后不小心呢踩到他的自己袈裟就跌倒了。
So on the road, she met the Buddha. Was very happy, and so she paid her respect, bowed, half bowed, and then she took a step back, just to pay her respects. And when she took her step back, she actually stepped on her sash and tripped and fell.
像这个踩到自己袈裟跌倒，这个其实这个很容易，像有时候我们也会踩到自己的袈裟。
Yeah, says stepping on your priesthood sash is something that is quite common, especially when you just start out. You can step back and accidentally almost fall over.
因为袈裟呢，它都是几乎到这个脚底下的这个样子，所以这个很容易发生。然后呢，佛陀看到他这个跌倒了，就赶快呢上去把他安慰，扶他安慰，跟他说法了。
So when she fell down, when the Buddha saw this, he quickly went to help her, and then comforted her and gave her a Dharma talk.
因为他是120岁了，所以他就跟他说你一定要了解你的这个身体呢，你是一天一天的这个来衰老这样子。
So she was already 120 years old. So the Buddha told her, "You must know that this body, day by day, deteriorates, gets older and older."
然后呢，你像这个身体呢，你随时呢都可能会就是脆散掉，就是说你随时你的这个身体呢都会因为120来岁了，随时都会往生，然后你就这个身体，然后就散掉了这样子的，跟他这样子一个开示，就是说你要注意到你这个身体还是要来，最终要能够看开你这个身体，然后要专心来思考自己的修行比较重要。
So I told her that this body can fall apart at any moment. You've been alive for 120 years, but this body can actually fall apart any moment, and all the elements return back to or scatter. So you need to pay attention to this point. You need to be able to see through the body and really focus on cultivation.
所以呢，这个比丘尼呢，老比丘尼呢，他就专心来思考佛陀的这个教导呢，他最后也证到了这个出国。
So she diligently applied what the Buddha told her, and she realized the first stage of arhatship, the stream winner.
OK， 我们再来讲也有给一位比丘来告诉他佛陀，佛陀告诉他要怎样子来做修行，这个来度过这个怎样子的一个修行，对于自信方面呢，这个一个故事，所以这个也是在法纪经济里面的。
There's another story about the Buddha teaching a bhikshu about how to cultivate the self-nature, also from the Dhammapada.
这个就是说，当时有一群的这个比丘呢，他就到森林里面去禅修，这个修行很多 打禅的都去森林里面去做打禅去了。
So there were a group of monks who went into the forest to meditate.
然后呢，不久之后呢，他们都进入了禅定，有这样子的情况。这时候呢，他们认为他已经呢脱离一切的这个感官的欲望，而他们认为他已经得了阿罗汉果了。
So these monks cultivated and actually entered the dhyanas, and because they thought, oh, we are free of desire, we're all arhats.
所以呢，他们就回去来跟佛陀报告但是事实上呢，他们都是高估了自己，其实他们都还没有证果。
So they went back to report to the Buddha, saying that they realized arhatship. But in fact, all these monks had overestimated themselves. They have not realized arhatship.
所以呢，当他们就回来要跟佛陀报告这个事情呢，佛陀在知道他们在回来的这个门的时候呢，他告诉阿难说这些比丘来看我呢，是都不会得到太多的法益，叫他们呢先去佛墓里面去看看，然后再回来吧。
So when these monks came back to see the Buddha, they were at the front gate when Venerable Nanda saw them. And the Venerable Nanda was given instruction by the Buddha, who already knew their situation, and told to Venerable Nanda, these bhikshus are coming back, but if I talk with them, they won't really understand the Dharma. So when they come to the door, you let them know that they should go to the graveyard.
Cemetery.
Cemetery, yeah, the cemetery.
所以呢，就叫阿难呢，他就去转告这一些修行的他们认为正果的，然后告诉说这个佛陀的话，他们就认为佛陀他是非常有智慧的，他一定有充分的理由要叫他们这样子做，所以他们就去这个墓园里去了，他们去了。
So they had, so when Venerable Nana told them about this, the Buddha's instructions, these monks who all thought they had realized arhatship, trusted the Buddha. They said the Buddha had true wisdom, and when he said to do something, they had its deeper reasons. So they all followed his instructions and went to the cemetery.
所以呢，他们去了这个墓地里，他看见这个很多腐烂的这个尸体在那边。
So they went to the cemetery, and in the cemetery they saw many kind of deteriorating corpses. Basically, not probably like the cemeteries in America where each of them are actually like heavens. I think Jing Weishu said when he came to our, he was like, wow, it's like a 5-star hotel. You have music, it's a very nice landscape. So here in India, it seems like the bodies are just lying around in the graveyard. They're all deteriorating at different levels of kind of decay. So 说我们可能在这个坟墓跟美国的坟墓不同。我记得那个经纬学看到我们美国的坟墓说，哇，这个像一个5星的旅馆一样，有音乐啊，都很美丽啊，怎样怎样。我想在印度那时候，可能那个尸体呢，就是放在地上，就他们就慢慢自己的就烂掉了。
所以呢，他们刚开始去还可以心平气和的来看待这些尸体，但是当他们看到刚死的这个尸体的时候，他们就非常恐怖的发现心中呢，他真的有惨惨欲动的这个意念。
So in general, they were pretty peaceful when they were in the cemetery. But once they began to see the corpses that had recently died, they started to have a little bit of fear in their hearts.
他这个当然 常常异动的这个意念啊，它这个意念是不好的，因为有一些像看到你的尸体刚刚往生的尸体，他们会有意念的，那佛陀看到他们的这些举动呢，他就跟他们放光来告诫他们。
So they would have different， 不是害怕，是欲望啊。
意念呢，他们有
意念，不是看到尸体就有害怕。
不是有意念。
So the monks didn't have once they saw the recent bodies or fear, but they had you could say desire. So for instance, they saw a recent woman who died, and then they'd have some kind of, you could say, lust in the mind, and so they could see that there's a kind of a desire in the mind. So at this point, the Buddha shone out his radiance, and these monks saw the radiance of the Buddha.
他说啊，比丘们啊，你们看到这个尸首的时候呢，你的内心呢，就升起了这个欲望，不是这样子吗？就是说你的心里面你就升起了这个欲望意念了。
So the Buddha told them, when you saw this corpse of this recent this woman who just passed away, it was in your mind you had thoughts of lust.
所以呢，这些比丘听到这个佛陀讲的这个，而且观察到他们的这个感官，就是他的这个感受啊，身体看到眼耳鼻舌身意的这个欲望呢，真的是非常多端的，一直在变化，是非常难以调伏的。所以呢，他们这些后来他们都彻底的明白这个佛陀的这个法，来告诫他的这个一个事情。所以对于这个尸首的这个十种相呢，我们也稍微提一下。等一下。
So the bhikshus heard what the Buddha taught them, and when they reflected on themselves, they could see that yes, they had lust in their minds, and they could see that their bodies, were kind of affected by the lust, and so they understood what the Buddha was trying to teach them.
所以呢，这个关于这个尸体呢，有10种相，就是说死掉了以后的10种的真相。它的第一个就是膨胀的相，这个尸体死以后呢，它会膨胀起来。
So then there's 10 aspects to the corpse after it passes away. So the first one is the body starts to bloat.
Yeah. 死掉以后，第二个就是会轻移，就是说身体死掉一段时间，它就膨胀以后呢，它会算发青，有青色的这个起来这样子。
So the second thing that happens is that the body begins to turn blue.
然后呢，第三个现象呢，就是说溃烂了，开始有脓，有溃烂，会发脓。
So the third is that the body starts to rot.
然后呢，第四个呢是断坏，身体会断坏，就是说烂掉以后开始一块一块的就断坏了。
So then the next one, number 4, is that the body, after rotting, starts to fall apart.
然后第5个呢，就是食禅相啊。这个食禅呢，有像在外面呢，有鸟吃啦，或者是蚂蚁吃啦，变成说这个吃了以后，这个残遗留的这个相。
So number 5 is that the various animals or bugs or worms start to eat the body.
第6个呢，就是散乱啦，就是说你被吃了以后，东一块西一块，就是散乱了。
So number 6 is the body starts to become scattered, dispersed, because all the animals eat different parts of the body.
然后第7个呢，就是说离散，就是散乱以后呢，就离开一段一段的这样子离开的这个相。
第7个这个吗？
第7个
叫什么？
这个斩折可能就是被切掉一块一块。
So number 7 is that so after the body kind of gets dispersed by the animals, it really kind of completely disintegrates, right? It kind of falls off piece by piece.
第8个呢，就是就变成全部都是血图像，就是说，只有一堆血了这样子。
So then it just goes on, decays even more, it just becomes a pile of blood.
第9个呢，就是说所有的虫呢都自己来吃它的血啊，吃它的肉啊，这样子的。
So all the bugs and kind of insects come and eat the body, the various body parts.
第10个呢，就剩下骨头了，就是合骨相，被吃完了，什么东西都剩下骨头这样子了。
Number 10 is what's left over is just bones. Everything else has been devoured.
所以呢，这个就是佛陀在世的时候呢，他都是鼓励呢，比丘呢常常要去墓地里面，或者是停时间，去那里来观看这一些，对于这个修行呢是非常有帮助的。因为你一看到这些呢，你所有的意念啊，怎么样子都会消失掉了。
So the Buddha encouraged the monks to go to the cemeteries to cultivate, to contemplate the various stages of the decaying corpse, because this, you could say, is an antidote to the mind of sexual desire, of lust. Because you could say we often live in a fantasy about what the body's like. We kind of make it shiny, make it pretty, make it fragrant, and we forget that actually when the time comes and our kind of what do you call it, maybe the 8th consciousness leaves the body, it basically falls apart into the elements, and it's not very attractive. 所以这个觉得蛮有意思的，因为我们很多时候就是很被我们的身体被迷了，真的很漂亮啊，很好味道啊，很干净啊，等等等等啊，就是来保护这个身体。但是如果你真正的去一个坟墓呢，你看到这个身体没有这个我们这个精神在里面的时候，就慢慢就都坏了，都衰了，等等，不是一个东西我们要太执着的。
所以呢，这个其实讲一般人呐，都是非常迷恋我们这个色身的，也没有修行佛法的人呢，特别会迷恋我们这个色身。那你经过有修行以后，你对于这些你就慢慢可以看得清楚。像这个佛陀呢，给这些比丘给他们要去坟墓的这个事情呢，真是很有用，对我们的一个修行呢，我们甚至于都会常常要想到这个10种的这个相，那我们就不会来迷恋我们的这个身体，这个是非常对修行有帮助的。
So as ordinary people, we often get attached to our bodies, get kind of deluded by our bodies, thinking this is something we really have to cherish and protect all the time, and kind of beautify, you could say. But actually, the Buddha's recommendation to these monks was to go to the cemetery to understand the true nature of the body, to see very clearly. And so as cultivators, to really contemplate these 10 stages of the decaying corpse is very helpful. It kind of helps give us clarity on the body. Yeah?
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
我们 今天大概就
we'll
讲到这
speak to
里。
here. Maybe just one note for the meditation that Jing Forsher just described. The meditating on the decaying corpse and the body isn't so that we develop a kind of a hatred of the body where we begin to abuse it. That's not the reason for it. It's to help us become disenchanted with the body, to be able to see through it and understand, this body is something I take care of in order for it to be healthy and strong so I can really cultivate the way. But I don't need to attach to it as somehow beautiful. I have to kind of make it always the most healthy possible and think that it's going to last forever, right? Just to say, we drop that kind of fantasy. 这个就说不是说我们要伤害身体，反而就是说我们要用身体的这个能力呢，来好好的修行，好好照顾身体，可以好好的修行，这个是道理。否则就是不要我们迷着身体，被身体以为我们这个身体是非常了不起的，要很保护，到我们变成真正有神经的这个问题了。OK， 好，我们可以回向功德吧。
好
，Yeah. Oh yeah. So talking about the bodies during this time right now, I think people know there's actually a lot of suffering happening. Talking about corpses, I remember just seeing an image because of the recent massacre in, I think, Bucha, called Bucha. It's in Ukraine, and it's just a lot of suffering. And so how can we respond? I mean, each person, I think, in their own ways can dedicate merit to the living beings that are both inflicting harm and receiving harm, and hoping that somehow that everyone can find some place of peace and well-being and let go of the anger, animosity, and fighting that fuels this kind of pain and suffering. And so what we're going to be doing here at the monastery is tomorrow morning from 7:15 to 8, we'll do a 3 steps, 1 bow. We say bowing and praying for Ukraine and Russia. And you can say also maybe for our own selves as well, finding peace in our own hearts. How do we hold this much suffering that we're hearing about in a way that we don't get into our own states of depression or anger or resentment, but actually can stay with the heart of care and compassion. 所以我们明天星期五早上7点15分会有一个3步1拜为那个 Ukraine 跟那个 Russia。这 Ukraine 是什么？
乌克兰
Russia 是什么？俄国。俄罗斯。我想大家知道那边有打仗，很多痛苦，所以我们就希望求平安，希望大家可以好好的，可以说不会伤害，可以好好得到真正的这个平安快乐。所以明天如果你有时间，早上7点15分，我们用的 Zoom link 是一样的，然后我们就进入这个 Zoom link 在我们的网上，然后就可以来跟我们一起3步1拜。
3步1拜很好，就是说我们祈祷他们能够离苦得乐。像这个离苦得乐的方法，念南无阿弥陀佛也可以，你可以回向给他，或者念南无观世音菩萨也可以，或者念大悲咒，来回向给他们，这个都是很好的方法，给他们能够离开痛苦，得到快乐。
So other methods of practice we can do as well is reciting Amitabha Buddha's name, reciting one in Bodhisattva's name, or reciting the Great Compassion Mantra, and we can dedicate merit to all those who are suffering, wishing that they find true happiness.
Yeah.
Okay.
像还有一个，就像大家听佛法、听无量寿经，我们来回向给他，这个也是很好的一个方法。
So we all study the Infinite Life Sutra together. There's a lot of merit and virtue in that, so we can also dedicate merit to
我
them.
们 来回向功德。
Let's dedicate merit. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all the sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master.
Amitabha.
阿弥陀佛。
下星期再继续。
So next week we'll continue to study the Infinite Life Sutra.